So, in honor of the new Mummy movie coming out, I went back and watched every single one of the originals. So in the original Universal Monster series, we have the original Mummy from 1932. So then, for whatever reason, that was remade into The Mummy's Hand from 1940, and then that had a bunch of sequels. Then after that, there were a bunch of standalone films from 1959 to 1971. For the most part, they're forgettable. Then we have the very well-known remake. It's 2 sequels, and it's kinda crappy spin-off series. Then, of course, the new movie. I'm not sure why we need so many, but they exist, so whatever. But the one I want to be talking about today is called The Mummy's Ghost, which was released in 1944. So the movie begins, and we see a man in black, who I'm assuming is a cult member, who's told backstory, or exposition if you haven't seen the first 2 in the series. So basically it goes something like this. Ananka and Karis were in love in ancient Egypt, but was forbidden due to Ananka's class status. She dies, Karis tries to resurrect her, but is caught and is buried with her. This fades into a scene of a professor giving a lecture about how 30 years ago the tomb of Ananka was excavated and brought to America and put in a museum, which we'll see later in the film. During this excavation, they also smuggled in Karis by accident, and everyone involved was killed, and Karis was consumed by fire, which was at the end of the last movie. So all the students that this professor is lecturing to don't believe him. A student asks how Karis was kept alive, to which the teacher responds,
Tana leaves. They grew from a low bush found centuries ago in Central Africa. Quite extinct now.
These will come into play later. So class gets out and we meet our main character Tom, who's a kind of unlikable college grad student. He's approached by a friend who asks if his girlfriend knows anything about the mummy because she's Egyptian.
Maybe your girlfriend could throw a little light on the subject.
You're crazy. How would Amina know any more about it than you or I?
Well, she's an Egyptian, isn't she? At least our ancestors were.
And your ancestors used to live in caves, so maybe you can tell us where to find the missing link.
So Tom basically just shrugs off his friend and goes to visit his girlfriend, who's with his dog, who has a very interesting name.
Hi there, Peanuts.
Even though he shrugged off his friend before, he still asks his girlfriend if she knows anything about the mummy.
You should have heard him this afternoon. Gave us an eyewitness account of that 3,000-year-old Egyptian mummy wandering around here strangling people. Why do you always get so jittery if I mention anything about Egypt?
She says she doesn't want to talk about it, and she's uncomfortable, so he responds in a very condescending way.
But what's wrong with Egypt, darling? It's as modern and up-to-date as any other country.
And moves on the conversation as if nothing happened.
Well, you ready to go?
Yes.
This is such a well-written character. They eventually leave.
Come on, Peanuts.
So we cut back to the exposition cult leader guy, who is cooking Tana leaves because we need a plot, and he also wants to bring Karis back to Egypt so he can rest peacefully or whatever.
Your mission is to bring him back to Egypt, and with him Ananka, his beloved princess.
For some reason, he shakingly puts some necklace on the other cultist guy and tells him,
You will never rest until the Princess Ananka and Karis have been returned to their rightful resting places in these tombs.
Then we cut back to the professor, who says he has it, or something.
I have it. I have it.
Then his wife walks in and tries to get him into bed.
You'll come to bed, won't you, dear?
No.
Oh, but it's late, and you just said you finished.
I found the means to finish.
What on earth does it say?
It says 9.
Is that all?
That may be everything.
All right. Then you come to bed. It'll still be 9 tomorrow night, won't it?
Yes, but tomorrow night the moon will not be full. 9 Tana leaves must be brewed during the cycle of the full moon.
Whatever has the full moon to do with it?
The moon affects the tides. It may have the power to affect these Tana leaves as well. I don't know.
Well, it's all too much for me.
That's my salvation, Ella. The fact that you're not a scientist and that it is too much for you. Now run along to bed and don't worry about me.
All right.
So apparently he has to cook 9 Tana leaves to bring back Karis. He does so because he clearly knows what he's doing. So as expected, the mummy awakens, and so does Tom's girlfriend, Amina, for whatever reason. She starts sleepwalking, and a black cat crosses her path. So the mummy eventually makes his way to the professor's house, who, for some reason, leaves the doors open at night for easy access, and the mummy kills him. The mummy drinks a potion, Amina sees the mummy, and passes out. Tom's friend tells him that the professor's dead, and somehow his girlfriend's involved. Meanwhile, the police are investigating the professor's death.
What does it look like, Coroner?
Strangulation. Strangulation.
They find mold on the body, they decide it's the mummy, and the case is closed.
That's mold.
The mummy.
Amina is being questioned by the police and has a white stripe in her hair, but this is never explained or mentioned to her. Amina says she doesn't want to talk about it because she doesn't know anything, but the officer keeps persisting.
Do you usually go walking on the campus in your nightgown?
I tell you, I don't know how I got there last night. Or why.
Well, something happened here to make you faint. What was it?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Tom eventually comes in, finds Amina to comfort her, and then the officer is condescending to him.
The murder took place after midnight. That puts us right back where we were before you come barging in here.
So eventually Amina recounts her night and then is told by the officer not to leave town. Tom notices the white stripe in her hair, but of course doesn't tell her. So there's a montage of newspapers warning the town. Everyone's scared, but the cultist member is watching close by. The movie cuts to the cultist praying again, who's making a potion of, you guessed it, Tana leaves, and the mummy senses that he's being called. Meanwhile, Tom is trying to be romantic to Amina, even though she's gone through a traumatic experience.
No, I just wanted to stop and look at you. You know, I haven't heard you laugh like that for weeks.
So Tom and Amina make out, and a shadow passes. She complains that she's scared and wants to go home, but he immediately dismisses it.
That shadow.
It's nothing, just your imagination.
I don't know why Amina is dating Tom. He seems like a really condescending and irritating person to be around. So anyway, there's this other guy that passes them. Amina still isn't comfortable, but Tom still dismisses it.
Take me home, Tom.
But you saw for yourself.
What a great guy. So the movie cuts to a dog barking as the mummy passes, and the mummy just kind of tries to slap the dog. The false scare dude comes back and is yelled at by his wife.
It's about time, too. Old King's been carrying on like crazy.
And eventually is killed by the mummy. The police arrive on the scene and says that nothing human could have come through this giant gaping hole. I mean, I'm thinking that maybe a sledgehammer axe could have easily made that hole. The detective also says that he wants to eat the mummy or something.
If the mummy didn't make those prints, I'll eat them.
So the detective tells everyone to not get in contact with the mummy if they see him, just keep him in sight. So Karras eventually finds a cultist member who's brewing the Tana leaves, and then turns his back to the camera as he drinks them, which is some grade A direction there. So the cultist makes his way to Ananka's tomb to resurrect her, and does another prayer. Meanwhile, the mummy runs around trying to find a way into the museum, and eventually breaks in instead of the cultist just letting him in. All this is going on as a security guard is just chilling listening to the radio, and the cultist does yet another prayer. The mummy touches Ananka's body, which disappears, and the cultist is amazed. The mummy then throws a tantrum like a 3,000-year-old man-child. Since he made so much noise, the guard finds them, and Karras kills the guard after he shoots at him. It seemed like the security guard actor actually hurt himself by being hit against the glass so hard. After this, the camera dollies in on the mummy, and we see a nice camera shadow. So Amina is woken up by all this for whatever reason, and is scared. A lady comes to comfort her, but Amina's anxiety is dismissed.
You must have been having a nightmare, dear. There's no one here.
So Tom goes to talk to the detective. He's clearly really tired of this guy.
What's on your mind this time?
So Tom thinks his girlfriend is in danger and has to take her away.
Well, she's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I want to take her to New York.
But he's denied by the police officer. Meanwhile, the museum murder is investigated, and another professor reads some hieroglyphics on Ananka's tomb.
Well, it may be so, but it sounds like a lot of applesauce to me.
The police go back to the professor's house from the beginning, where the other professor translates some more hieroglyphics. So we learn that they need to make the mummy return using Tana leaves, and then trap him with a pit in the ground. So we cut back to Tom and Amina sitting together, and Tom yet again tries to dismiss her anxiety.
Why don't you relax, honey, and try not to think about it?
He says he really wants to leave town with her, and then bluntly asks to marry her.
My family is busy right now getting out the heirloom jewels for the bride.
The bride.
After Amina declines, since she's clearly in a bad state of mind right now, instead of being understanding, Tom is more irritated than anything.
So you don't want to marry me, huh? Trying to brush me off.
So finally, the actor actually pronounces his dog's name right. Apparently it's Peanuts.
Peanuts and I had a man-to-man talk this evening, and we both agreed that what she needs is a bodyguard who will never leave her side.
I'm not sure why it's plural. Like, I've known a lot of dogs named Peanut, but Peanuts is a bit strange. Tom gives Amina his dog, saying that he'll protect her, and that's really not how you hold a dog. So we get more cultists praying as the mummy idly stands around, doing nothing. The mummy then goes down an incredibly steep path without falling, and I'm not really sure how this is possible considering he's 3,000 years old. As this is happening, the police try to recreate the first professor's death.
He said 9 as if it was very important.
Important? Why, it's the clue I needed to complete this. 9.
So the mummy makes his way back to town. Amina wakes up for whatever reason, walks around a little bit, faints, as Penis the dog is barking, and Amina is carried away by the mummy. The lady looking after Amina tells Tom what happened, and we get some more superb acting from Robert Lowry.
Get help! Hurry!
So the townspeople are told by the police to find the mummy and draw it into this trap they made. Penis the dog keeps following the mummy, who's carrying Amina, and eventually the lady comes in and tells the men that Amina is kidnapped. Tom finds Penis the dog and talks to it, who clearly understands what he's saying and leads Tom to Amina. Penis seems like a really smart dog. At this point, Amina has more gray hair, which at this point looks like an imitation of the Bride of Frankenstein. As Tom is trying to keep up with Penis the dog, he does a barrel roll for some reason. Eventually, Amina wakes up, and the cultist explains who she is.
You are the Princess Ananka, third daughter of Amenophis, one-time pharaoh of all Egypt.
And then the cultist talks to himself for a little bit. At this point, Amina's hair's turned completely white. It's never really explained, but I'm guessing it has to do with looking similar to the Princess Ananka. As all this is happening, the angry mob is getting closer and closer. The cultist decides that he wants to turn immortal with Amina and flee the country. Somehow the mummy understands this, stops the cultist, and pushes him out a window. The mummy makes his way down the steep road again, and Tom tries to fight him, but clearly fails. Meanwhile, Penis the dog gets the mob to follow him somehow.
What dog? We're on to something. Come on, boys.
Because he's clearly the smartest dog on the goddamn planet. And the mummy picks up Amina as the mob is distracted by Tom. This is the one thing I like about this movie. I love how in this one shot we get a lot of dramatic irony. These mob guys are going here to find these guys, but in the same frame we can see that they aren't actually there and that they're going somewhere else. At this point, literally everyone is just kind of following Penis the dog. I mean, what if he just has rabies and is going crazy? Tom calls out to Amina like the wimp he is.
Amina!
And then there's an overly long chase scene. At one point, Tom trips and everyone stops to help him up, letting the mummy and Amina go. So it's too late. The mummy brings Amina to a swamp, and Tom tries to run after her, but for some reason, the swamp is certain death.
You can't go in that swamp. It's certain death.
Which really doesn't make much sense. Tom is really upset by this, so he covers his mouth with a tree branch for whatever reason. The mummy and Amina disappear into the swamp, and the movie abruptly ends. And that's just about it. It ends there. Yep. That's it. So in closing, I just want to say, I'm not really sure why there's so many of these things, as there's clearly little to no continuity in them. But hey, at least it's somewhat entertaining. See you later.